All right, we're down to step 3 in our Activity 4 guide. And then this is the longest step of all when you're actually moving through and applying the HTTP client code everywhere. I'm going to work it through, or at least show you through step D, which will show you through an HTTP method. And then the rest of it is pretty much a repetition of that until you're all done with the code. All right, so we'll go from step 3A through step 3D. Almost all the action is in music service, so I want to bring that up in both applications. So here's the original music service, and here's its modification. Okay, we'll talk about the constructor here. So the previous constructor, the version 3 constructor, built the plugged-in data, right? The artificially created data here, and most of what this constructor is doing is building the data structures for this, and then most of the methods are simply returning what the constructor built for us. All the data is local, coming from a file that's here. In fact, I still have this included here. This shouldn't be in there anymore, but I left it, and I'm going to still leave it there. All right, so let's look at the differences in the constructor. So this is using dependency injection. As we saw earlier, the main component has included HTTP client, the ng module for this, the app module here, has included the HTTP client module, and has imported it here. And as we've learned about Angular, importing a module here makes it available for all the components that make up this module. It's injected through the constructor, and it uses this convenient TypeScript mechanism to both set a private HTTP variable and also a parameter that sets that variable, HTTP, which is really an instance of the HTTP client that has been injected via Angular. Notice the hostname parameter, or the hostname data member up at line 11, which will be our string to localhost, where our Node Express server is faithfully listening. So the use here in getArtists. Now notice here that getArtists used to just be a blocking method that returned an artist array to the caller. We'll look at both this call and its response. Here we have a callback method. So this is going to be this is asynchronous plumbing, right? So when the asynchronous method is done, this getArtist becomes asynchronous. It returns right away. But when the asynchronous method is done, it'll call the callback method, letting the caller know, the caller of getArtist know that the data has been fulfilled and it is ready to display. So we used HTTP get artists array, templated to the artists array. That's what we were expecting to get back. This .hostname and the URL is completed here. This is an observable. So it doesn't do anything unless we subscribe to it. We subscribe to it, and then when the data is ready, we get the callback with the data. Now I have to say here, this data is in a form that's pretty much ready to be used. It's slightly different than this code expects it to be. So this is kind of reformatting data that is pretty much ready to use. So there's some simplifying steps that could have been taken in this application to use data directly. Nevertheless, it loops through it and transforms it and then makes the callback for artists. So this is fulfilled part D, I, and double I, and now it's ready to do the update list artist component ng on a net method to read the artist and essentially use the callback instead. So let's look at the list artist component now. So all the changes have been in ng on a net. Recall that getArtists used to be a blocking call that returned an array, and you can see that it's being used that way here. In contrast, it's been updated in version 4 to set a callback method, which will be called when the data is ready. Now, when the data is ready, it sets this.artist to the data that it returned, and then sets this.selectedArtist equal to null. Essentially the same activities with a little bit different mechanism. That is a asynchronous callback method. So the rest of the application is pretty much that pattern over repeated. So you modify the music service API, and then whatever component has called that service will have to be modified slightly to deal with the asynchronous method of the data. So I hope this helps. Complete Activity 4. Thank you.